Great. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think we are now going live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Sorry for that delay. Welcome, everybody. My name is George Miller. I'm your host. I'm here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. And I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence and leadership today. But I want to remind everybody, and especially if this is your first time, that you can ask any question. You don't have to fit it into the topic that I have thrown out. If you have any question about your career development, whether that's a relationship with a boss or your team or teams from another department or anything like that. That's fine. Any question career related is fair game. I will probably tie it back to leadership and emotional intelligence because that's what I do. But I want to open it up for everybody. And there's a couple ways that you can jump in. You can come here on the Zoom link directly. I love it when you do that. I love it when you're able to come off mute and we can engage that way. If that doesn't work for you and you've still got a question, type your question into the comments section. I'll be able to take a look at that. You can let me know if I am if I'm on target or not. Feel free to let me know. Great. Okay, so we are up and live rolling here. Again, you can jump in directly on the Zoom link or type your questions into the comments section. So, while we're getting started here, I want to share a little bit about EQ and leadership. So for those of you who have seen me talk about this before, this is going to be a quick reiteration of that. The way that I talk about leadership is that everybody is a leader. Every single person is. If you are breathing, you are influencing the thoughts, feelings, and actions of others. So the definition of leadership is the ability to influence the thoughts, feelings, and actions of others. We all do that to some degree. Even if I'm not actively speaking up in a meeting, I am therefore leading towards not speaking up in a meeting. And this is a big thing. I am working with several clients who are super smart and they don't speak up when it matters in meetings. They haven't practiced that skill. They always want to bring it to an individual, or they try to bring it into a team meeting and they are unsuccessful in doing that. And so it's not that they have a bad idea. That in fact, their team, the one person I'm thinking of in particular, their team needs them. Their team needs them to be better at speaking up in meetings. Okay. But a lot of us have been trained. If you think about it, when I was in school, I spent a whole lot of time just sitting in my seat, waiting and waiting and waiting. So it was actually getting trained into me to not speak up, not ask questions. So to some degree, this is all of us. And just learning how to speak up is a skill. You can probably see some people who you're like, man, how do they just interject themselves that way? How do they do that? It is a skill that you can learn. Now, for the people who speak up in meetings oftentimes, and they have to often learn the skill of listening more and how to read a room and how to partner with other people in that room. So it can go either way. So again, as I'm talking about emotional intelligence and leadership, I just want to clear the board and say everyone is a leader. So if you are listening to this, that's you. And so now what does emotional intelligence have to do with you as a leader? So the first thing is internally, emotional intelligence. I think of that as what's going on inside of me. So if I'm in a meeting and I'm not speaking up and there's something that I want to say and I'm getting increasingly frustrated about it, I might, well, what I used to do is I just numb out. I just daydream. I wouldn't, I mean, my body might be sitting there, but I was not there. And so I'm leading towards that. I'm leading towards disengagement. Then if I start paying attention to what's going on inside, now it's like, oh my gosh, there's a whole world of emotions. I don't like what is happening in this meeting, or I don't think that I really have anything to contribute. And so I'm just going to keep sitting here quietly and waiting for it to be over, which is actually a little bit of anger turned inwards. That's boredom. Notice if you ever catch yourself saying, "Oh, I'm bored." Yeah, I was bored at work today. That means that you are not in touch with your anger, that you are actually using that in a way that's kind of creating an excuse, like, oh, I'm bored. And notice how it kind of puts the blame on other people, like it's their job to entertain you. Yeah. So that's what I used to do a whole lot of, and I still do it. Not like I don't do this stuff anymore. But as you are thinking of yourself as a leader, now if you catch yourself saying stuff like, I was bored, or I didn't know what to do, now once I start to saying I don't know what to do, I'm saying that's even a little more honest. It's like, oh shoot, I don't know if I have the skills to speak up the way that I maybe I want to, or the way that would be effective. This is all, we're in the realm of emotional intelligence, just becoming increasingly aware of what's going on inside my body, what's happening for me, and what are the feelings I'm having, and what data is that giving about me in this environment. That's the foundation. If I am out of touch with myself, if I'm sitting in a meeting waiting for it to be over, I am not going to be effective in how I speak up in that meeting. This happened last night, actually. I was in a meeting and I was upset about something, and so I made a suggestion, and my suggestion was dismissed, or the rest of the group was like, no, we're not going in that direction. That's still a win for me because I said something, I spoke up. I was not effective in shifting the orientation of the group, however. So, I was like, okay, what's going on inside me? Well, I have fear. I've got anxiety about that. And you know what? My fear is now, it starts to give me more information as I'm starting to pay attention to, oh, I didn't even realize I was afraid. I was at the level of I'm bored. So I said something, but then it highlighted enough for me to be like, wait a minute. I was kind of bored, but that means I'm kind of angry. And oh, I was afraid that people might not be getting the full value that I wanted them to be getting from the meeting. Okay, so I was afraid about that. And I was also feeling hurt that some of the preparation I didn't seem to make a difference. So now when I look at my interjection into that meeting, I can see, oh, I wasn't really in touch with what was going on in me, and I wasn't really in touch with the group. So I can look at the group and say, well, actually everything seemed like it was going fine. And I was just worried about my ineffectiveness. It might not have had anything to do with that group. Whoa. So now, as I do this, as I become more aware of what's happening inside my body and my emotional intelligence, I'm increasing my emotional intelligence. Part of the price that I pay for doing this is that I start to look at a bunch of stuff that I might not have looked at otherwise. I'm going to have to now be aware of ways that I make mistakes and I'm ineffective, and it's uncomfortable. But the advantages here are huge, because I was able to recognize that the concerns I was having are valid concerns. It's my job to help people get the most out of things in meetings that I am facilitating. That's my job. So it's a totally valid concern. And then I can look at what is actually happening in the group, And if I want to make a shift and I have a suggestion, I'm going to now check it out with more individuals in this meeting. I'm going to say, how was that meeting for you? Were you getting the level of engagement that you wanted? And I'm going to be able to use my concerns, which are, again, are valid concerns, and I'm going to be able to address those concerns in a more effective way. This is really important stuff. So now I didn't say this, but we're moving into the realm of social intelligence. This is how I interact with other people. How aware am I of others? But it takes being aware of myself first. So I could have come out of that meeting and I could have said, they are all wrong. I mean, forget if I can cuss or not. They're all a-holes. And I could make it be about other people and I could blame. But now I'm actually able to look at what it meant to me, and I can test it out and see how other people are doing and see what their concerns are. And I can be clear about what my concerns are. So I'm able to have more boundaries about what's important to me and be able to assess what's important to other people. And I'm not dependent on them agreeing with me. They can have a different experience and different opinions, and it does not invalidate my sense of self. This is big stuff. This is incredibly important in leadership development. If we're really honest about it, we're getting our feelings hurt all the time with other people. And if I'm in a meeting, the chances that I'm going to have my feelings hurt are really high. And that can be great information, give me valuable data about what's going on in that meeting. Okay. So, wow. Yeah, I love this stuff and I can talk about it all day. But I want to remind everybody that I encourage you to jump in and let me know what questions you have. So as I talk about this stuff, as I'm talking about myself and how I'm developing as a leader and the role that emotions have in that, I want you to be thinking about yourself and how you're relating to what I'm saying, and see if that stirs up anything that you're working on, any challenges in your life right now. See if that stirs anything up, and then let me know what questions you have from that. What are you working on? If you're joining in today, what did you hope to get from joining in? What's the thing in your life that you want to move forward? What is it at work that you want to move forward? So I open the floor to any questions. Feel free to type your questions into the chat. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to come off mute and just ask your questions. And if you are viewing in on LinkedIn Live and YouTube, go ahead and type your questions into the comments section. What questions do you have about yourself in your career? Because I look at career as a pathway for me to become who I can become. It is the way that I'm engaging with the world, engaging with others, and that is giving me a lot of data about myself, and I can flex and flow, integrate the feedback coming back, and use it to grow myself, use it to become more of the man who I want to be. What questions do you have?
Hey, George, can I weigh in? This is Eleanor here.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on, Eleanor?
Hey, thanks for doing this. I am passionate about EQ and am interested in expanding my career into kind of EQ coaching, I suppose, for all people, leadership certainly, but most importantly, women in the workplace. I am wondering if you have experience with any of the assessments that are out there, and if you could recommend kind of uh, one of those or a couple of those that you think could be potentially helpful in people understanding themselves and giving someone who is a coach a place to jump off with in terms of guiding people deeper into knowing themselves and learning skills.
Okay, so there's several assessments. In fact, I'll throw one that you're welcome to use and share with clients, potential clients, etc. Um, the the Hogan and Disc are ones that a lot of companies use, and so they're familiar with them. So if you're going into a corporate environment,
Mm-hmm.
you might want to get a certificate in Hogan, facilitating that and saying that you have been through a program or you've been trained by somebody,
Great.
because a lot of people will respond to that one,
Okay.
and also DISC.
Okay.
Um, those are the two most corporate, most popular ones I know of.
Great.
Um,
Thanks so
and
much.
if you want to get started with something that's real fast, and the reason why I use the one that I use is because it helps me identify other people quickly.
Mm,
And it's called the care assessment.
okay.
It was designed for hairstylists
Oh, interesting.
so that a hairstylist would be able to know, oh my goodness, okay, I've got a cooperator or an analyzer or a regulator or an energizer sitting in my chair right now.
Okay.
And you would see, if you do the Hogan and the Disc, you'll see these four personality styles. You'll see how they relate to all other personality styles.
Okay.
Is in the history of personality assessments, I think it goes all the way back to Socrates and probably even earlier, where people started recognizing that, wow, if I were to, categorize my village, I could say that this quadrant is like this kind of person, and this quadrant, etc. So this has been something that has been with humanity for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with the care assessment is, in the way that I look at it, is to help me identify who I'm talking to quickly so
Yeah.
that I can make more of an impact with them.
Lovely. Okay. That makes total sense. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So you are becoming a leadership coach in emotional intelligence.
That is a goal of mine. Currently, I work in HR and I'm a
Huh?
generalist, but at a small law firm that's women led, women owned, women run. And yeah, I just find that a lot of my one-on-ones with people at the law firm end up tending towards coaching around emotional intelligence. And I have a lot of passion for it and uh, am really interested in the empowerment we experience when we understand how to, uh, yeah, figure out our own self and work towards building our strengths and kind of understand how to manage social interactions with others, even if they're really different than us, just based on different
Mm,
personalities I've had to work with uh,
hmm.
myself. And so, yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with how one person's will say something and another person just won't be able to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. And both of them are right in their own way and both have good intentions in their own way and this kind of lack of understanding. Oftentimes I find myself in the middle as a mediator helping translate the language between these two people's styles, and really aligns with I studied languages in college, and so the actual translation of language is something I think that helped me understand that uh, feelings and processing and the way we approach problems also oftentimes requires a translator. And I feel excited by the idea that I can help people learn to translate themselves so they end up in maybe not less conflict, but in productive conflicts. So
Yes. Oh, I like how you're saying that. Because
yeah,
the truth of it is, as adults, learning hurts.
it does. Learning requires conflict in your own self and with others. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's my the growing maturity, which, we'll never fully meet, but the gaining of wisdom as I've gotten older and come into a career where I realize so many of us continue to approach problems the same way we did when we were 7-year-olds in the first grade, is, it has allowed me to broaden my empathy and create awareness in myself on how to um, kind of own these different styles I have and be less judgmental about the way others bring in their styles as well, so that we can find places to meet in the middle and everyone grow. So, yeah.
Great, great, great. You might have interest in some of the emotional intelligence curriculum that I work with.
Beautiful. Okay.
It, so there's if everything is going to hurt as I grow, um, getting changing my relationship with my emotions, with the core emotions, fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. There's a quick, this helps speed up the process.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can do a reframe, just a question, when I say fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy, what's your first thought about those five core feelings?
Yeah, I think what I've gotten down to is there is, at least in my own practice, there is either joy or there is fear. And fear is at the root of all of these other things, I think. And so something that's really worked for me in my coaching is figuring out what is this worst case scenario fear that somebody's experiencing around a certain conflict. And uh, yeah, speaking right into that fear and figuring out how to build a structure so that uh, we can make it through regardless of whether that worst case scenario happens or not. And that helps release some
Oh,
of the control around it.
so you're using the fear as an in to help highlight things that could go wrong. And so you're validating the fear. You're
Yeah.
saying, like, great, I'm glad that you feel that anxiety
Yeah.
because it's highlighting a potential issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And then building from there, right? I think that has felt for in my self has felt very empowering to validate a fear um and normalize it, help me understand I'm not alone in that. And then yeah, build a bridge to a new space. Kind of, yeah. Walk right into it, right? Buffalo into the storm. Yeah. I don't know if
I
that.
don't know that phrase. Buffalo
Oh
into
yeah,
the storm.
oh yeah, like the buffalo on the Great Plains, they would walk right into a storm. They were the only animal that would walk right into a storm so that they could get through it more quickly, as opposed to other animals that would go and hide um, as it passed. And so, yeah, I think of that as kind of a guiding principle to walk right into the fears, and then you'll get through them faster.
Oh, I love that.
Good.
Oh, cool, cool. So with the joy and the fear, as you are talking with people and affirming their fear as a useful tool and affirming your own fear as a useful tool, then my what it sounds like is happening is that people will start to allow themselves to be with that discomfort more and more, so that the defensiveness doesn't have to be there when
Mm,
talking to you or other people,
yeah.
because they're starting to see it as a gift instead of something for them to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And so then you're also getting people going to you more, saying, you know what, I in the past, when I felt afraid about something and I kind of wanted to hide it, now I'm starting to know that that's it. When I share that with somebody else, we can actually work through it instead of, me trying to figure it out all by myself, and sometimes things getting even worse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well,
definitely,
cool, cool, cool.
definitely trying to be a partner to people. That just because I know that's what's helped me through the problem solving. So,
Well, thanks for jumping in. Let me know if you have any more questions on this. I'm seeing another question coming in here that I want to jump to. So is there anything else before I move on?
nope, that's great. Thanks so much, George. I appreciate you.
You bet. You bet. And I'd love to hear if you use the Connect and Thrive link that I threw in there. Feel free to use it with your team or anybody and let me know how it works for you.
Thank you. Will do.
Awesome. So, for everybody joining in, this is Career Lab Wednesday. I love it when you jump in directly on Zoom and can engage with me that way. If you can't, you're also welcome to type your questions into the comment section. I'll do my best to get to those. I've got a question coming in here about how do you coach that in the DEI space? So, how to coach, I'm assuming that you're referring to emotional intelligence and the fear and the five core feelings: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. Is that accurate? Just give me a thumbs up
Yeah, well, I
if
have
that's what you're
my hat on.
referring.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, doing well. So tell me more. What do you mean by coaching that in DEI space?
Well, thank you for the another Wednesday. I did jump in late, but guys were in a great conversation because I deal with some anxieties myself. But as a person looking to grow and develop and potentially be prepared for any leadership opportunities. That's a very good point that you helped her resolve with how to, move forwards from fear in any given situation. That you have to identify what it is and then be able to think your way through. But how do you teach that as a coach or in a cultural space where some things are just taboo. Some folks just won't speak up about what they're experiencing because they have shame or what have you that is attached with fear. How do you coach that?
Well, there's a lot of ways, a lot of things. That's a very, very big thing to address. When I think of DEI space, the most useful thing I have encountered there was a book called My Grandmother's Hands. Are you familiar with that book?
No, but thank you for referring it.
Okay, and I don't know. If I had all the time in the world, I would research this more. But the book is by Resma Menachem, I think is how you say his name. Um, and he has worked with veterans, police officers, And the whole exercise, the way the book's written is that you do exercises, and it's all about body experiences. And so a first thing to understand in emotional intelligence and leadership in DEI space, I think, is to be aware of how afraid I feel in my body around people who are different than me. And I'll share a story about this. When I'm walking my dog, I'm aware that different people respond differently. So my dog is this tiny little friendly thing, but it has German Shepherd mix. It's Corgi German Shepherd. And so some people who have been attacked by dogs as when they were younger, their body immediately gets rigid. They have a fear response. Even though my dog is like wagging its tail and smiling, it's good that their response is a fear response because something bad happened to them most likely. And so it's important that they have that response to protect themselves. Um, yes, yes, that is the book, My Grandmother's Hands. And so now other people aren't going to have that response. And, they grew up with a dog that was friendly and they're like, oh, great, there's this dog wagging its tail. So they're a different feeling floods their body, maybe something more like joy. So to understand in a DEI space that when I'm talking with somebody who looks different than I do, who sounds different than I am, I'm immediately going to have a bunch of reactions. And if I'm not acknowledging that about myself, I'm not going to be as effective in interacting with people who look differently than I do. Because it's just what's so. We're at a point in evolution where we are still catching up with how quickly we are all running around on this planet together. So it's emotional intelligence for the DEI space is like incredibly important. In fact, I don't know how a leader would operate in the DEI space without training in emotional intelligence. I just don't think it could be done. And that's kind of Resmaa Menakem's point. The beginning to the book is just phenomenal. Will knock you on your ass as he makes his case for, look, you do not really get to develop as a leader in this space without acknowledging how afraid, hurt, and angry you feel with other people all the time. It's just how it is. Not that I'm going to act on that. When I say feeling afraid, it's not like, I don't run away or I don't, it's not like I run down the street screaming or something, but I do have a fear response. And if I'm unconscious of that fear response, I'm going to suck at talking to people who look and sound different than me. So, I think that's a great starting point for your question about how do you coach emotional intelligence in DEI space is you just start with noticing the truth about how uncomfortable you are. That's the biggest thing. Just start with noticing the reactions that happen in your body when you're talking to people who look and sound different than you. When I travel to the South, when I'm down in Louisiana, I notice my first sensation as I'm talking to people on the street is I'm a little freaked out. They're all saying hi to me. I'm not used to it. So I kind of have this like, oh, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a cold northerner. Huh. And then I can start to say, okay, well, everybody's saying hi to me. I notice I feel a little uncomfortable, but you know what? I'm going to lean into it and I'm going to have fun with this and I'm going to start saying hi back to everybody and we'll see how this goes. But if I didn't acknowledge that fear in the first place when I'm down walking through New Orleans, what might happen for me is I would just kind of be like, geez, everybody wants something from me. I'd be making up some kind of story about it. And then I'd start getting exhausted and I couldn't wait to get back to the hotel room. And I'd be like, yeah, I can't wait to, I'd probably go to a bar and I'd start to inebriate myself and start numbing myself out because I didn't know what to do with all this positive attention I'm getting from people. And so you start with noticing what's going on in your body. So that's a great question. It's a big question. And for starters, I'm going to refer to Resmaa Menakem and say just start by noticing the core feelings. Notice the fear when talking to somebody who's different than you. Notice the hurts. And the hurts is it might be like, oh, wow, I'm talking to this person who's different than me, and I want them to understand me. There's a bit of a hurt in that, a yearning, a hunger to be known and acknowledged. Oh, wow. Isn't it interesting how I'm wanting this person who's different from me to acknowledge stuff about me? Cool. Cool. We all do that. We all have that experience when we're talking with other people. If I'm talking to somebody who's very similar to me, then it's often easier. I'm going to feel more affirmed whether or not they're actually affirming me just because they're kind of more like me. I'm like, "Oh, see? That's more like me. Great." Well, this is just how human beings are. But I can start to be more aware of that and say, "Oh, well, this person who I think is kind of like me, they might not actually be that much like me, or we're only on this very surface level similar. And so, maybe I'll take some risks with them and I'll find out more about who they are and see if we're more similar in terms of our values, things that we value in life." So again, in the DEI space, you start with noticing what you're feeling when you're talking about sensitive issues. Notice what you're feeling when you're talking to people who are different than you are. Then we go through the 5 core feelings: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. We get into anger. So anger always builds on fear and hurt. So if I'm feeling angry while I'm talking to somebody who's different than me, this is where it's very important for me to be paying attention to that fear and the hurt. Because maybe I'm feeling angry because they're not affirming me simply because they're different in the ways that I'm used to being affirmed. And so it's actually more of a hunger and a hurt and a fear than it is anger. But it's showing up for me as anger. And if I keep that going in that interaction, there's a pretty good chance that that interaction's only going to go so far. Is if I keep just bringing my anger, which is a wave that my system is trying to deal with the hurt and the fear in that interaction. If that's all I'm bringing to the table is that slight aggression, that conversation's not going to go that far. But if I can develop the skill of noticing the fear and the hurt underneath the anger, then I may be able to take it further in that conversation I'm having with somebody who looks and sounds different than I do. Okay, so I've been Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. So you scream before you leave the house. That's a great strategy, just to let the body feel all of the anxiety instead of trying to turn it down or say something's wrong, just to let myself go, ah, right? Because that right there is affirming to me that there's nothing wrong with me for feeling the way that I'm feeling. Like, yeah. I mean, you think if you need an excuse to feel freaked out, just think that we're on this world that's like hurtling through space, like whipping around the sun and somehow avoiding a bunch of planets and debris in outer space. Like, it's terrifying. So I think any one of us could give a scream at any moment and totally be fine with that. I mean, in the corporate setting, it's not going to go over well, but that's why you do it when you're in a space that can where that's going to work, and in your body you're allowing that to be. So I'm sharing a lot about this. How is this landing for you with in terms of using emotional intelligence in the DEI space?
Honestly, it's it's it is helping me understand how I've been processing the world around me, and especially in the DEI space, because it's not always a situation where it could be someone external of my background that that coaching would need to be provided. So just that overall taking the time to trust one's, intuition on the circumstance or the situation, to be able to know how to move forward with that process. It builds trust. It may be difficult, as I was understanding you to say, because of such a diverse community and world that we live in. We, even though we're all Americans or we all live on the same continent, we don't all necessarily share the same experiences, or even if we do share some similar experiences, they're processed differently. And so just kind of you reaffirm what, and then that's a difficult piece, is that, kind of keeping yourself grounded in that you got this, space, even if it's scary, even if I have to scream before I leave, I got this. And I can manage all of these different scenarios, even in a corporate space, if I trust my instincts.
Okay, this is great. Okay, so this, I'm glad you said what you just said, as you're sharing about how this is affirming that as you accept whatever you're feeling, you do better in a space where there's all these different people. A next step that I was reminded of when you were sharing is to learn to talk about yourself. So I come from a Mennonite background, which is like conservative Christian. And so I have this experience when I'm going into groups where there's, let's say that I'm going into a place that's more Catholic. So a bunch of, WASP people, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Oh, I guess it's not Catholic, but whatever. So if I'm going to a denomination that's different, my first thing is I'm kind of out of place. I'm like, uh-oh, do I belong? Uh-oh. Like, what's happening now? What I can do that really helps is to just name it and say, I'm George Miller. I grew up in a Mennonite community. I went to Mennonite schools, private schools, where, we were taught about our Mennonite heritage. And, it's different when I walk into a room where there's a bunch of people who were in the military. In my background, that was not something we did. And so I'm learning now about how to be in relationship with people who are different than me, and really seeing the value of people who grew up in the military. And I might even be able to say, this is true, by the way, that I'm sad that I didn't have the experience of boot camp. I'm sad that I didn't do that, because I was able to be a conscientious objector. There's no war going on when I was growing up, but I was able to just say, hey, this is part of my religion. I don't do this thing. In truth, I missed out on a lot of opportunities. I missed out on a type of belonging. And so now I can say that. I can say, a little bit about myself, and I can relate it to the group that I'm talking to. I could say, oh, wow. So you grew up in a Christian environment that's different than the Christian environment I grew up in. What was that like? And I get to name the way that I'm different, and I claim it. And that takes the pressure off for other people as well. And it gives us stuff to talk about. It helps me to be curious. So if I'm talking to somebody from the South, then I can say, wow, like I come from close to Philadelphia, where everything was go, go, go. And a lot of people just never talked to each other on the streets. And if somebody did start talking to you on the streets, it often was a problem. So I come down here, everybody's saying hello to me, and I'm kind of freaked out. What's it like for you in this environment? So that's a really good skill to learn. So the first thing of, what feelings do I have in my body? How do I affirm myself for that? And then I can take the next step, and I can share about who I am in this diverse community. And that's going to help other people understand more about me and where I'm coming from. So what are your thoughts about that? Does that help in terms of using emotional intelligence and leadership in a DEI space?
Yes, I yes, it does. I still find a challenge, which I'm currently reading myself through now as a part of my own space. Something that I think academically, 30 years ago, it was taught. But I digress from that because it is a rabbit hole in itself. The sociological components to dealing with one's emotional intelligence as it relates to backgrounds of people and sharing information. Did I make myself like self-disclosure? You know, um, for instance, using your example of you being um, a Mennonite student and of the Mennonite faith, myself, um, I grew up in a more experiential religious environment. Like, because of the struggles my family experienced, I think there was somewhat of a bit of trust broken um,
Oh yeah.
within the church. And so
Mhm.
I didn't really get a chance to be intertwined in the religious practice of what I know now has always been my Christian faith. So I'm at this point trying to find out how to, if I should define or assign myself to a group. And so when I have conversations about those things with people, especially if you are a devout Christian and you know the word, then it brings up all kinds of stuff. So that's what I said. I do understand it, and having the emotional intelligence to understand that in itself helps me move through dealing with not just my people, but different backgrounds of people, that the reason why we behave is because whatever faith-based institution we were provided as young people. And without that, it leads to other things. And so I hope I didn't like open up some kind of rabbit hole, but what you just explained, I'm working through that part too, and I'm using EQ to facilitate all of that, even in the corporate space.
Uh-huh. So in um for me, I rebelled against the environment I grew up in. And there was a price I paid for that because I was never really able to be secure in myself. The person who actually tipped me off to return to my Mennonite roots was, well, a couple of mentors, but also Gandhi. Because when I was studying Gandhi, um, he had a very close friendship with a Christian in South Africa. And this close friend said to Gandhi, Gandhi, you should just become a Christian because you're such a better Christian than any Christian I know. And Gandhi's response was, how could I even get into Christianity? I don't know enough about where I come from, about the religion that I was born into. So how could I even do anything meaningful in Christianity? And I thought that was profound because I had spent all this time looking at other religions and, doing it, but it was mostly from a place of reactivity. So then I said, okay, the truth is that I grew up in a Mennonite environment, and I need to go back and I need to really dig into that and learn more about my roots. And as I do that, I will understand myself better, understand that religion better, and it'll actually help me um, understand and respect other religions even more. And so I've been on that path now for a while. Um, and there's a level of self-acceptance that has done for me. And so I think that that's an important thing for a lot of people, is to learn how to embrace the faith that they grew up in, because that faith was the one that was there while the programming was being laid down. And yeah, we only have this lifetime, as far as I know. If I do get reincarnated, apparently I don't remember the last one. So I got the time that I can remember here on Earth to work with. So I think that approach, that's the one that I've been ascribing to, because I just get more out of life that way. Okay, I see that you're relating to that. And that way, then I can talk about the things in my Mennonite upbringing that I like and that I don't like, just like that. Of course, I value a peaceful approach to life. It's a nice ideal, but there's things that I don't like about it. There's consequences for that, one of which I was sharing about, the lack of military experience that I never got. Um, and so, but that way I can have a more honest and meaningful conversation with people who are different, who grew up in different background than me. Oh, we're at time. Well, I think, thank you so much for your questions, Akita, because I have found them great to dive into. So I really appreciate that. And I have completely lost track of time here. We're gonna wrap up. Thank you for joining in. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I love the questions that you bring in here, because I don't know where we're going to go, but I will tie it back to emotional intelligence and leadership training. and like we've been doing today. So recap, if you want, take a look at this personality assessment. This thing is great. It will help you understand yourself, your language, and it will help you understand other languages better, and at least give you an on-ramp on how to talk with other people. So fill that out. It'll take you about 10 minutes, and then there's a quick video. And once you do that, you can share that with other people. If you are doing some trainings, if you are working with clients, feel free to use that. It's something that I think most people can engage with quickly. And then in terms of connecting with me, you can always jump in here, talk with me here. If you want, set up a 15-minute time with me. We'll talk together 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm also going to be doing in-person things here in Chicago for those of you who are inspired or terrified and inspired, but want to get into the lake in wintertime, which is a practice that I have developed and I look forward to doing this winter. Let me know. I'm going to be going in there and teaching groups of people how to do that Saturday and Sunday mornings. So if that's something that interests you and you happen to be in Chicago, let me know. All right, everybody. Blessings. Yeah, right. Blessings, everybody. And I will see you next